Today on CityCast Seattle, Mayor Wilson delays the sweep of a Ballard homeless encampment, shortcomings in state law for prosecuting rape cases, and our weekend recommendations. But before we get into it, I want to know Marcus Harrison Green, founder of the South Seattle Emerald and Hinton Publishing, columnist with The Stranger, how are you faring during Carmageddon? As you likely know, there are two lanes of I 5 north that
Yes.
are currently closed. I know southbound traffic has been a nightmare. Have you had to sit in that traffic yet this week?
Not yet. Unlike other people who have had New Year's resolutions and have already, did the quitting day or whatever it's called, mine was to take more public transportation to places. And so thankfully, I have not had to sit in that hellscape that is the traffic on I-5. But
Everyone be like Marcus,
my
be
gosh,
smart.
Yeah,
It'll
I'm
save you
hearing
time.
Marcus be, a true angel of
I
2026.
What about you, creative producer Sam J. Leeds? Have you been surviving Carmageddon?
So far, so good. I have been taking surface streets. I have not been on I-5 yet, I will say. So it's mostly been like the traffic that's backing up as a result of I-5 being a mess.
Yeah, I have for about a total of 10 minutes until I realized it was a parking lot and tried to get off immediately and take surface streets.
yeah.
But for the most part, Marcus, I'm with you. I am generally a transit person when I can be, and I think that is gonna be the way for the next 6 months. So,
Yeah, and seriously.
all right, well, let's turn to some city news. So, Mayor Katie Wilson announced on Wednesday that she would be delaying a planned removal of a homeless encampment in Ballard. If you've been on the Burt Gilman recently or you've driven on Leary, you might have gone past it. It's kind of in that Freelard area, and there are over a dozen tents in that encampment. So, some background to this: during Wilson's campaign, she was asked whether she would end sweeps, and she said she would not commit to ending them. And according to both the Seattle Times and Como, under Wilson's administration, the city already has removed some other tents and RVs. Como reports that that number is around 100. So Wilson actually went down to the encampment on Wednesday and then issued a statement saying that she's extending the deadline for removing that encampment to allow more time to assess whether, quote, we can improve outcomes for people living there, for their neighbors, and local businesses. At the time, she also said she'd be announcing steps to open more shelter space. And then on Thursday, Wilson's transition team met, and Wilson issued a statement announcing that she's going to identify public lands to house people, and she's creating an interdepartmental team to make recommendations for places that might be possible. Those recommendations should be in by March of this year. They're going to identify city-owned property that might be good candidates for that. It also is going to identify shelter programs that might be able to increase capacity. What are your thoughts on this decision?
I'll say, I think that, part of it was driven, by residents in Ballard, actually. There was Bruce Drager. He's the chairman of the Ballard Community Task Force on Homelessness and Hunger. And King 5 reported that he actually submitted a request through the mayor's online contact form. And Mayor Wilson actually called him back, to arrange, the site visit. And so, Drager had actually documented 56 sweeps in Ballard over the last 3 years.
Wow.
And had said that the previous administration under Mayor Bruce Harrell, that their approach simply was to displace homeless people without addressing underlying problems. And so that ultimately, if the city was going to sweep this encampment, it needed to have a place for them to go. I mean, these people they're still attached to the city of Seattle, still where they're rooted. And so simply because you're going to sweep people from, one neighborhood, they're going to end up being in another. And they still have connection here.
They live here.
They live here. Exactly. So what does it matter if, you're essentially tearing down visible homelessness in one area of the city only to have it erected elsewhere? That isn't a plan. I mean, that's quite frankly, that's just insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
The piece of it that really sticks with me about all of this is that I think the sweeps there are to address the concerns of the people who are uncomfortable seeing people experiencing
Right.
homelessness, right? It removes people from visibility, but it actually makes it harder for the people who are experiencing homelessness to get housed because often people's belongings are being thrown away. People are losing their wallets, their paperwork, like all of the things that you need in order to like set up a bank account, in order to get employment, in order to receive mail. And so when those things get tossed, they have to start from scratch again, and you're essentially creating more barriers to people being able to get the services that they need to get back on their feet.
Yeah, and to Sam's point, I mean, these are members of our community. I remember covering a sort of pop up resource center for folks who were experiencing homelessness out by City Hall. This was maybe 7 or 8 months ago, and so many of the people that were coming up to get resources and towels and blankets and shoes and so forth. These were folks who were working jobs. They were, some of them were working two jobs, and had fallen into homelessness just because they couldn't afford rent. On the human level of like when we're talking about sweeps, like people need to be able to see themselves in these, encampment. And many of us, and I say this as somebody who about 8 years ago, I, was sleeping on a friend's couch because I was facing eviction. So many of us are truly just one life circumstance away from sharing, the scenario where we may not, have a home or a roof over our heads. And I think, the more that people can accept that, I think the more we can hopefully have a little bit more empathy and patience, for these encampments.
Yeah, Bruce Harrell's administration set records for the number of sweeps carried out over his tenure. So I believe there were 2,500 alone in 2024, an average of 6.8 a day, so like nearly 7 a day. I feel like this is really the first test of Wilson's values here and how she's going to handle things. What do we think this signals about what she's trying to do, especially, going down to the encampment, calling back the person who raised
Right.
this concern? What message is she trying to send here?
To me, like she's at least attempting to signal that she is available to the people who are her constituents, right? And I think by actually going to the encampment in Ballard and sort of seeing what was going on there, and I assume meeting people who were living there, she's hopefully trying to make leadership decisions based on what she's hearing from the people who would be impacted by them, rather than sort of staying at City Hall and making decisions from on high. And I think people often pass by encampments or encounter people who are experiencing homelessness or mental health crises on the street and have like a remove from it. It's unsettling, both in that like this is happening in a place where you live, and also that there, I think for a lot of people, if you separate yourself from identifying with that person, you're sort of saying like, oh, this could never happen to me, instead of dealing with the reality of like what Marcus is saying, that for many of us, we're just one medical crisis, one family member needing additional assistance, one car accident, away from something like this happening to us. And so it gives me a little bit of hope that like our leadership of this city are coming at this from a more human place and at least trying to understand what's going on and what are the needs of the people who need services, and who need housing. But, to your point earlier, Jane, the Wilson administration is still sweeping people. Like they've given the numbers out pretty freely. And so it also makes me wonder, what were the circumstances of those sweeps? Why were
Right.
those necessary? And this one was not.
Yeah, I also just want to know what will come of this plan. It kind of feels like a plan to make a plan a little bit, which I think is better than nothing. Like
Concepts of a
great.
plan, you might say. No.
Concepts of a plan. I mean, one of the other things that is part of this executive order is to provide adequate behavioral health support at shelter locations and to identify opportunities to partner and coordinate with regional partners and organizations that already have a track record of
Right.
helping people with this. That sounds great. I would love to know where that ends up. I guess the question is, how much time will this take? Have we not already been doing this? I guess issuing an executive order maybe makes it more of a priority. But I'll be interested to see what comes of this.
Right. It is only a little over 2 weeks into this new administration. I'd be curious to your point to see, like, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, what does this actually look like? The Harrell administration, we're doing all the sweeps. It didn't lead, obviously, to a significant decrease in our unhoused population, right? Whatever alternatives there might be. I mean, knock on wood, right? They can't be worse than what we were already doing.
Well, over those 3 months, those 6 months, the next year, we will be following this closely. So we'll see as this unfolds. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a piece that you recently wrote, Marcus. Marcus,
Rape cases.
You and the Stranger
I know
editor-in-chief,
you first published a
Hannah
piece about
Murphy
this
Winter
story about a year ago. I think
co-bylined a
actually, to
piece
the day.
about a sexual
So
assault.
before
that
you tell us
highlighted
the
what
story,
you all call a
listeners,
quote, structural
I want to flag
crevasse
that
in the
this
state law's
contains
ability
details
to deliver
about a
justice
sexual
in
assault.
So if you are
Rape
not in a place
cases.
to listen to that
I
right
know
now,
you
can
first
just
published a
jump
piece
past
about this story about
the
a year
next
ago.
ad
I think
break.
actually to the day.
So Marcus,
before you
tell us
tell
about
us
the
the
story, listeners. I want to flag that this contains details about a sexual assault. So if you are not in a place to listen to that right now, you can just jump past the next ad break. So Marcus, tell us about the story.
So Cheryl De La Strinos, she is a community organizer in Seattle, also a self-professed abolitionist. She was someone who, at least her first inclination wasn't to go through the criminal justice system with her case. But ultimately, for her, she felt, she had no other choice because there was no other mechanism than to get any level of accountability than to do so.
So tell us a little bit about what happened to her.
Yeah, so she was organizing at the time for community businesses and so forth, and she ended up being connected with a man by the name of Pedro Gomez. Gomez worked Mayor Bruce Harrell as his external affairs coordinator, so he was somebody who was, tasked with sort of connecting community members and business owners with civic resources. So they met under the auspices that this was going to be a very professional meeting. Gomez ended up introducing alcohol into the situation. Cheryl felt pressured to take shots of alcohol that he kept sort of putting mezcal and so forth in front of her. But they ended up at an apartment. Still unclear who owned that apartment.
Right, Gomez's name was on the lease, but didn't appear to be his home.
Right,
Unclear.
didn't appear to be his home. It's still very unclear, but nevertheless, she woke up there not knowing, how she got there or, what was going on. But,
Yes.
She woke up to him, performing non-consensual sex act on her. And she, immediately pushed him off of her. According to the police report, told him no repeatedly. It eventually ended up, that she was able to push him off. She eventually was able to make it back home after calling a Lyft. The very next day, she was extremely distraught. She ended up getting a rape kit, done. Right. Ultimately, the rape kit, did show that there was DNA from Gomez, and she did, file a police report with SPD. It ended up taking over a year and a half for them to come to any type of conclusion, meaning that when Cheryl first came to me to tell this story, it was January of 2025. And we didn't get a resolution from King County until just earlier this month. During that year, I would essentially email the King County Prosecutor's Office every day to, see, is there a filing decision? Is there a charging decision? Is there a filing decision? And, I didn't get anything until, until earlier this month. I mean, think about Cheryl, right?
It's a long time to not have resolution.
Right. Who didn't believe in, this criminal justice system and, that it would bring her accountability anyhow, but, did so because it was, one of the few things that she felt was, actually available to her. think about that every day where you're just over a year and a half waiting for any type of resolution. You're unsure. And meanwhile, right, the person who assaulted you, right, is out scot-free, doing God knows what, right?
And so the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office is not prosecuting Gomez, as far as we understand it.
Right. And so, right, to put a fine point on it, the King County Prosecutor's Office did reach the decision to not move forward with charging Gomez. However, as Hannah and I relayed in our story, they did say 5 different times that they did believe Cheryl. It's just
I thought that was so interesting that they were so forthcoming about
Right.
that, right? That we believe her, but we are still choosing not to charge this person because state law is written in such a way that we don't think we would have a case, essentially. I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about that, Marcus. I know you and Winter wrote that, quote, the legal and cultural definitions of consent differ. So, like, what are the differences here that led to this decision to not charge this person?
Yeah, I mean, in just sort of layperson's terms, the state, felt that in state law for a King County prosecuting officer to pursue a case, it would need to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. They were not certain that they could, mainly because they felt that a jury would find that this was a he said, she said type thing.
I mean, like, what even would be evidence here? I think one of the things that you had raised in the piece was like, is it reasonable to ask a victim of sexual assault to have recorded their own assault?
Right. Cheryl herself said that. What do? You tell the person, oh, hold on, let me get the video camera out so
Right.
that I can prove this. I'm trying not to like criticize the prosecuting office, so much, but at the same time, it's like you can't help but say like, why not just try, right? Why not just try? Even if you lose at the very least, you send a message, right, that you take this extremely seriously. I mean, I think about people who are in Cheryl's, circumstance, right? And what they're thinking about of like, whether or not to pursue charges or press charges against somebody, right? And, hearing this story are they going to be more or less inclined to do so? Right?
Is there any move to change state law on this? I mean, what would that take? It does seem like it would be maybe complicated to try and redefine a lot of the terms at play here.
Yeah, I mean, in talking to some lawyers, it would definitely be a sort of a huge climb, is what they were saying. We may need to even completely like sort of excavate state law in some cases, which is never an easy thing to do. That being said, in terms of recourse for individuals like Cheryl, she hasn't necessarily ruled out potentially pursuing civil charges. And I think this is very important for people to hear because so often when you hear cases of sexual assault and rape, there are so many people who are always like, well, why didn't they just go to the law directly and yada yada yada? Why are they doing a civil case and not a criminal case? And I mean, it's
is
circumstances
why.
like this, right, where it's like this, Cheryl did quote unquote everything right, everything that people say that you're supposed to do. And look what happened. She had a year and a half of anxiety, right? And this person is not being held accountable for any of the actions that he did.
Has Gomez responded to this?
Not to my knowledge. When we originally had reached out to him for the first story, his lawyer got back, paraphrasing here, but said he was basically looking forward to the whole story coming out, and he has maintained his innocence. But I would just challenge anybody to go. Don't just read my story, right? The first one or the one that I co-bylined with Hannah. Go read the actual police report. It's out there, and come to your own conclusions. And again, I want to stress that the King County Prosecutor's Office did say that they believe Cheryl, unequivocally so. So,
Marcus, I'm curious if Cheryl talked to you at all about what she feels like justice looks like outside of the criminal system. I did a fair bit of reporting on the Me Too movement a few years ago and talked with Tarana Burke, and she was talking a lot about the fact that, you know, for so many people, it's not just the trauma of the actual experience, right? It's also the fact that, like, exactly in Cheryl's case, you submit a rape kit, it takes a really long time for that information to come back. Then you go through the criminal system and you have to keep restating what happened to you.
Right.
So even if you do get a case, even if you are believed, you're having to relive that trauma and prove yourself. And so, you know, I'm curious for Cheryl as an abolitionist, what would justice or healing look like outside of this very broken system?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. When I sort of had put that to her, I think, quite frankly, I think she was still trying to process this in some ways, but then also, I think it's sort of immediately, it's sort of like, how do we as a community sort of hold space for healing for her, yes, but also just for, folks who are survivors. And I think it's also holding folks accountable who have committed these actions, right? Regardless of whether the legal system wanted to hold Mr. Gomez accountable, I think we as community members, should he show back up within, the Seattle community can hold him accountable. I'm like, in terms of like, where are we putting this person at when it comes to, positions of power? Where are we, hiring this person? How are we like elevating and holding this person up?
Justice is a community issue. Yeah. Well, Marcus, thank you so much for joining us and for bringing us this important story.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak about it today.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll have Ben Keenan on to talk about our weekend recs. But real quick, before we let you go, Marcus, what are you doing this weekend?
Well, Jane, I'm glad you asked. I am going to be at the Rough and Tumble in Columbia City, woman-owned sports bar. I will be cheering on our Seattle Seahawks as they face the 49ers of San Francisco. I have had a long-running debate and trash talk with my friend Drew, who's down there in San Francisco. He has already started up. I am holding on, waiting until hopefully, knock on wood,
sweet
the Seattle
victory.
Seahawks win. Grant you, they're the number one seed. Everybody, they're a Super Bowl favorite. We know how that goes, though, in Seattle with the sports heartbreak. So I'm trying to stay measured right now. You should damn well be sure, though, if the Seahawks win, I'm going to be just giving
Marcus will
Drew
be in the
all
streets.
all the things, all the things. Anyway. Yes.
All right. Well, we're all hoping the Seahawks win here, but I am especially hoping that they do for your sake, Marcus, so you can go back to Drew and tell him to sit down.
That's the main reason I'm rooting for them right now.
All right. Thanks again, Marcus. We'll talk to you later. All right. So we have our resident man about town, Ben Keenan, joining Sam and me. Okay. So to kick things off, I wanted to ask, what do you all want to shout out that happened this week? Either in your personal life, good news that you saw happen in the world?
Yeah, I'm happy to start with this because I came off a week last week where my friends introduced me to The Pit, right? This is a show that has really taken the world by storm. I had never seen it. I heard it was just a little too like medically accurate. I don't do gore. I don't do blood. It makes me very squeamish. My hands are sweating just thinking about it. And I was like, wow, you know what? I really miss medical shows generally. So what good thing has happened to me this week is I have actually started rewatching Scrubs. A very different energy than The Pit.
Does it hold up?
It holds up. Some of the jokes you go, huh? And then you think, no, those jokes made you go, huh, way back when the show was also first airing. So I don't think it's like problematic funny. It's funny where in the way it was like, they got away with it back then and they still got away with it, towing the right amount of line, if that makes sense.
It's funny. The Pit came up yesterday on our podcast. Liam and Chase ended the podcast by trying to convince me to watch it. So maybe I'll just defer and watch Scrubs instead.
Yeah, it's the happy medium.
Sam, what about you? What do you want to shout out this week?
Well, in a little silly self-plug, speaking of TV shows, I got to go on CityCast Pittsburgh's podcast this week and talk about my favorite topic of all time. I know, I'm sorry. I'm still loyal to Seattle, I promise. But I got to go on their show to talk about Heated Rivalry.
Sam's old love.
Yes, old as of what, like a month ago?
Yes.
But then last night I went to this restaurant in First Hill that is called Gold Coast Kitchen for the first time. And my friend and I were discussing Heated Rivalry because they just started watching it. And the waiter overheard us talking about it and was like, oh my God, wait, can I go in on this with you guys? And so then we ended up having like a 10-minute conversation with the waiter about Heated Rivalry. So it was just a really lovely moment of interaction. It felt very sweet, especially in Seattle where people often do not engage with strangers. So this show, as much as I just love to talk about it because it's delightful, also is bringing people together in a way that, you know, the people crave the zeitgeist, as we've been saying. And that was a
rivalry, bringing people together, breaking the Seattle freeze with hockey, with ice hockey. That's adorable. I do feel like I was just... again, going back to a conversation I had yesterday with Liam and Chase, asking if Game of Thrones was the last piece of monoculture. I feel like Heated Rivalry is approaching that level. Like, I feel like so many people that I've seen in the last month have been like, are you watching it? So welcome back, monoculture, in the form of hockey romance.
We've missed you.
Yes. Well, my delight of the week is I decided at the turn of the year that I wanted to make more time for art in my life. And I also wanted to have that be social time because I feel like art feels like high pressure when I'm like, I'm setting aside an evening to like make art, like capital A art. And I was like, let's make this lower stakes. So I just told some friends that I was going to be hanging out at a brewery and that I'd bring some craft supplies with me and I'd be working on something, and invited them to join me. And I had a few friends come out and we just sat around having little ginger beers and like crafting for a night. And I think I'm going to do it every month.
I love that.
Had a lot of
so
fun. It was just nice to be out of the house making something.
I learned, and my friends and I do this too, Jane, we, go to a brewery and have our social time there, but I learned the term parallel play. And I think this describes exactly what I'm going to go play by myself at a brewery. You're all welcome to come play next to me. We can chit chat while we're playing.
Because I feel like also sometimes Seattleites are weird about like, well, who's coming? Like, do I know the other people? Or are we going to have to make conversation? Like, it feels higher stakes, but somehow like the friends who showed up, a lot of them did not know each other previously, but it was lovely to be able to engage over like what we were each making. And that just spurred conversation too. And I just had so much fun. It was just really lovely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
All right, well, what are you all doing for this long weekend? Or what do you all recommend that is happening around town?
Well, obviously, and I have to shout out this for producer Ashley, the Seahawks are playing the 49ers.
Yes.
I will say allegedly on Saturday, only allegedly because depending on if you look it up on Google on your phone versus on your desktop, it does sometimes give you, as we've tested here at CityCast Seattle, a different day where it was telling me that the game was allegedly on Sunday at 2 p.m. and I would have missed the whole thing.
Okay,
so,
you want to hear my conspiracy theory?
Tell us.
Yes.
Google, based in San Francisco. Who are the Seahawks playing this weekend?
49ers.
The 49ers.
The 49ers. Oh.
I mean, I'm not saying anything really.
I'm just saying maybe
but...
everyone should go find the game time on Bing only. Bing, Microsoft, Seattle. Yep. I don't know.
It's probably right. Yeah.
I'm jumping on this conspiracy theory bandwagon. So that I will be
new Pope theory. Yes.
New Pope theory. I will be locked in for that game this weekend. But other than that, allegedly, again, the weather is supposed to be decent. So I just really want to take time to go outside, walk. Like I said, I was sick this last week. So I haven't really had time to go outside, and some of the, sun breaks that we've gotten. I just want to go on a nice long walk and just touch some grass, feel the air on my face, maybe hear a bird chirp. Probably just up the hill. I live in Ballard, so we have this nice hill all the way up to Finney Ridge, and just get a nice little sweat on, walk for 45 minutes, and just go straight uphill. Nowhere crazy.
Yeah, go up the ridge. What about you, Sam?
Exactly.
This is like a shout out of a thing to do, potentially for our very early morning listeners, since people will be listening to this on early morning Friday. There is a MLK Day, like pre-MLK Day march that's happening from 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. starting at the Rainier Beach Community Center. And it's being put on by kids from several schools in the Rainier Beach area. They're like really excited about doing this, but they're asking for neighbors to march with them in order to sort of feel like a safety in numbers and also like a community feeling. So if folks are listening early and happen to be free this morning from 9:30 to 11 a.m., a thing to check out. And if you can't make it, there is an actual MLK Day, like on the day march happening as well. That one is starting at Garfield High School, and there'll be an indoor rally at 11, and the march starts at 12:30. That one takes place every year. I've been in years past. I spotted Macklemore there one year.
What?
So
That's
go
a draw for
Seattle
people.
himself.
Go to the march.
yeah, exactly. If you're wanting a Macklemore spotting, which I don't know if that's a thing people crave, but there is the potential for that. And then also it's just a really great way to be in community with your neighbors, which seems to be my rallying cry these days. So definitely go check that out. And I'm also an audio nerd over here. My friend and I are going to be hosting a little like listening session for a couple of our friends, both some like sound art pieces, but I also am going to be diving into the archive and finding some speeches from rallies past
Very cool.
to listen to as a group. And it feels like, a good opportunity to just feel like rooted in a history that we unfortunately need to be drawing on for strength these days.
Yes.
So.
As one of the speakers at a rally last weekend said, it is our turn to fight. And I think feels like a good weekend to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I think just piggybacking off of what both of you said in terms of joining within community, I'm a firm believer in the fact that joy is an act of resistance, right? We hear that a lot. And I think within Seattle, a lot of people want to resist, but don't necessarily know how to get out and do the joyful part of that. So one event that I have looked into is KEXP is doing their 26th annual Expansions MLK Unity Party and live broadcast on Monday the 18th at 6 p.m. at the Clockout Lounge. Basically, it is going to be a night of, according to KEXP, dancing and music and celebration in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So if you're interested in that, tickets are on their website. If you want to go out, hit a protest, listen to some of the stuff that Sam is talking about, some of the former speeches, going out and doing some reflecting, listening to the speakers, and then go be joyful with your community. That is an act of rebellion, especially with some of the stuff that we're seeing across the nation right now.
Go dance if you can. I promise you will feel better.
Move your body, sweat it out.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all for today here at CityCast Seattle. Ben, thank you for suggesting that we go dance.
Get out there and dance. Move your bodies, everybody.
All right, Sam, and thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you, Jane.